Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to office hours. We received a number of questions. A lot of them were very challenging. So Jon and I had the opportunity to discuss these with the rest of our team, come up with some answers. So we want to dive in. A lot of them had to do with custom development options. How do you do custom dev inside of Titan? That was a general theme. And so we're going to take a dive into that and answer it since if you want to customize a web page inside of Titan, there's really 5 different ways to answer that, depending on what you're trying to do. So it could have been you want to change a layout, you want to add link to a third-party application, you want to embed some JavaScript, you want to embed something in an iframe on the page. Did I get them all, Jon?
Yeah, I mean, also along the lines of, I'm just looking for some creative ideas, right? I'm trying to explore ways to make the site look better, or do things that are out of the box. I got this great theme that you provided, but maybe I want to explore doing some other unique things. So
yeah. So that was the theme of a number of the questions. We also received questions about training, which really, when we read the training question, how do I get more training? It really the last part of that question from one of our bigger clients was, I want to make my site look better. So it's really kind of along the same lines if I want to customize stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about training. So we're going to cover that today too. And then finally, we had questions about the Linktree app that's out there in the wild, allowing people with social media accounts to create a customized web page with all sorts of analytics and other stuff. And Linktree is a paid service, but actually you can do the basics of Linktree inside of Titan. So we'll give you a little demo of how to do that. So those are the 3 main topics that we're going to cover today. So let's dive in. Jon, customizations. What are the different ways you can customize? Are you sharing your screen?
I believe so.
That's it.
All right. So I've got a screen here of a workstation, and we wanted to cover, like Patrick said, a few different ways that are real easy for getting outside the box, doing some custom things in your site. And one of those is raw HTML. Raw HTML it's raw. It's all very flexible, very powerful, but you need to know what you're doing and have an idea of what you want to inject and what is it that you're trying to put in. Well, you might have been.
Let me pause for just a second, Jon. 1 second. I'm sorry to break your train of thought. If you're just
no problem.
A couple of people have joined us late. We're going to talk a little bit about how to customize pages and a variety of different ways to customize pages today on Titan. So if that's of interest to you, this is the topic we're going to go through. Go ahead, Jon.
Yep,
sorry.
You bet. So you might be, kind of just stumbling around the internet and you see some visual element that you really like. We had an example that we found here where you've got these 4-up panels with this really interesting slider, type of view, but it's in a scenario where you've got a code pen and it's giving you an example of HTML and some CSS and maybe even some JavaScript that you could use on your site. So how do I take this great code pen? A lot of us, if you're a back end or front end developer, you've used code pen to do this type of thing. Well, you've got the HTML and the CSS. You can put that right into a raw HTML block. So I wanted to show that as an example. For this particular case, it's got some HTML here. I'll go let's just do a Control-A, Control-C, and I'm going to come back into Titan, and I'm going to drop a raw HTML block. And I'm not seeing the raw HTML block in my environment. What's up with that? Well, we can change that, no problem. Let's quick do that as a preliminary step. So maybe you have the raw HTML block hooked up, maybe you don't. That's something that you can enable in Titan Admin on your site. You go to blocks, you go to your site, you go to blocks, and you find raw HTML. Look at here, it's inactive. I better activate that. Save that. Go back into content. And so now on my sample content page, I'm going to add a block, and here it is, raw HTML block. Now, I had that HTML to paste in, so I'm just going to Control-V, paste that right in. Well, on its own, that's not going to be quite enough. I need some styling. So I'm going to go back to here. Here's some CSS. We'll Control-A, Control-C. And if you're familiar with HTML, that has to go in a style tag. So
And one of the prerequisites of customizing a page like this is that you have some general familiarity with HTML and CSS. You don't need to be an expert. A lot of stuff can be done with cut and paste without fully understanding what all the code is doing. But it is one of the things when you're starting to customize pages in any environment, any content management system, it really helps a lot if you have some understanding. So not that that can prevent you from experimenting, but have more success the more.
Right. And if you are familiar with it, you'll know right away by looking at some of these CSS classes that they're styling main elements like the body tag or the HTML tag. Well, in any old Titan environment, a lot of the styling is defined by your theme. So you're not going to want to necessarily override those, but we can look at this and say, well, here's an HTML and body tag. I'm not going to want that. I'm going to strip that out. This body tag, well, I'm sure my theme is defining something about the body, but I know I'm working with this raw HTML block that I'm plopping in here. So, I might know that all Titan blocks have a class on them called Titan block. And this one in particular is the raw HTML, which is also by the freeform, which is also a HTML style block. So I'm just going to make a couple of small tweaks to the styles that I got from that code pen. And boy, I think that's probably all I need. It didn't have any custom JavaScript. I will see if they're resolve any formatting issues, say done. And there we are. So now I've got a raw HTML block with what seems like pretty close to that example that I found, online, just, walking around. If I want, I can publish that and even take the time and preview it. Oh yeah, so maybe I play around with some of the fonts, maybe some of the styling. Maybe I choose to use a different layout within my theme, which that was one of the things that is another way you can customize your content is take a look at what options you have for page layouts. This theme has a center, a home, and a left nav center. Well, maybe I don't need the nav. Let me try just working with that. And I'll go out and look at the live version of that since I published it. Yeah, so now I got a nice full width layout. And yeah, so that's one way, right? Just find some examples online that you like and paste them into raw HTML. Another common one that we hear, or maybe you find a JavaScript snippet or something that you want to integrate, some custom library. Well, you can use Titan snippets to help integrate that. If I go ahead and we'll bring up a different sample page here. A good example, here's another that is a simple pie chart using the chart.js library. It's pretty commonly used for bar charts, donut graphs, scatter plots, things like that. So it's a pretty common one out there. And here somebody has used a really basic configuration to generate a simple example of a pie chart. You can do the same thing in Titan using the example code that they've got right here. In a similar way, I've already set it up ahead of time in this environment, but the snippets tab is one of the places that you would go to integrate a custom JavaScript snippet like chart.js. And I've got an example of it already hooked up and hard-coded. The nice thing about the snippets tab is it shows you in a sample here where it's injecting the code. This is in the additional meta tags. I'm going to expand that and just verify, yep, there's my reference to chart.js out on Cloudflare, CDN. So that'll end up in the head of my page.
So you set this up ahead of time. You set this up ahead of time?
Yeah. It's just this one line. It's a script tag with a source out to a CDN. Almost all, custom JavaScript libraries are like that. They'll live out in a CDN. Like if you're using jQuery, that'll be out in a CDN. And you want to use those CDN links because most sites use them off the CDNs in the wild. So it'll probably already be cached on your browser or for your end users out in their browsers, and it'll load most, efficiently. Anyway,
for the sake of our anybody that might be on the beginner or intermediate level, a CDN is a public content delivery network where people have parked libraries of reusable code, images, all sorts of stuff can live on a CDN, and it's publicly available.
Right.
There's private CDNs, but in this case, you're referencing one with this chart.js that's out there on Cloudflare, which is a known CDN, where all of this source code in this library just lives permanently, and thousands and thousands of people reference the same link.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
So with a snippet set up, then now I'm back to adding content, and just like we did before, it's a matter of using the examples and the code that they've provided. Somebody else was playing around and did it with this fiddle tool. We can use that as the example content. Make rid of this and that, and go back here. We'll do the same thing where we use raw HTML. Paste in some HTML. You could also do this in the freeform editor. Just not knowing what all I'm going to put in here. I like using raw HTML. It's a little bit like a one-stop shopping type place, because I can grab my CSS.
You're cutting and pasting the HTML and the CSS off of the page. And if you put CSS in there, you're putting it in with the style tag. So now there's two parts. Now, we should point out that these things, we're putting a style tag in on the top of a page is a discouraged behavior inside of Titan, but it's allowed, but discouraged. So you certainly can do this, because what this is doing now is overriding whatever. If you have a known style guide, people could override that here and make it look terrible, or certainly off-brand, and annoy the heck out of anybody that's in charge of the department. So it is within your power to do this, and also something that's discouraged. So we just had to have that disclaimer.
Right. But along with that disclaimer, hey, these great questions. I want to customize. I want to do something unique. I want to do something, beyond what my theme lets me do. You can do that. You can do that. It's just sometimes we kind of glaze over the power and flexibility of things you can do with Titan because of the constraints that we want for our end users and our authors,
and our clients want to.
Yep, exactly.
With great power comes great responsibility. So,
amen.
Write that down.
Feels like that should be a part of a movie or something.
It's something.
So, all right. So I injected some HTML. I did it while Pat was talking, but I also injected some script. So the script tag, if you want to inject some JavaScript, you can do that too, right in the raw HTML. And this is, just from that fiddle, but it's the way that you initialize the charting library. So put that down and go ahead and publish that. And this was on sample one. Let's go ahead and look at that. And there you go. So here's that sample one page, just using some simple JavaScript and a library we found online. You can add some nice visualization, type elements to your site.
Yeah, to take that inch further, if you wanted to change the blue thing to like a different size or something, how
Sure.
Just fiddle with the JavaScript just to give people an idea how easy that is.
Sure. I mean, all of that is done right here in this script. So yeah, like we've been saying, it helps to have some background in JavaScript. It helps to have some background in the APIs of these third-party utilities you find. A lot of them will have documentation. So you find their site, you dig through their documentation and find out examples. But from a real easy just look, I don't know much about chart.js personally, but I can see this JavaScript. It's initializing a new chart, and it's a pie chart. And here, this appears to be the data for the chart along with colors and labels. So if I wanted
hex colors. No, oh yeah, purple, gray, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if I wanted, let's see, what would be one not represented? Orange.
The blue one is the second one, 19. Or yeah, go ahead, orange.
Orange. That was the last one. I can go down here.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, do I know what hex code is orange? No. But I can put in whatever I want here. No. Let's go and do some twos. Twos are nice, like that.
Wonder what color twos are.
It's going to be a little bit more greenish, I would guess. But let's find out, because it's fun and it's custom.
Yep.
So orange, well, turns out it's still kind of
dark.
But anyway,
Yeah.
But the label definitely changed.
And the size, you could have changed the size of the pie slice. It's got to add up to 100, I assume, in order for it to work correctly, and then so on and so forth. So anyways, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So we can toy around with that type of thing as much as we want. So we can make this a little bit more different. There, it's a little gray now, a little bit grayer. Anyway, so that type of thing, very easy to accomplish and work to. Other types of customizations to content, Pat alluded to external applications. Maybe you have some in-house developers that like working in PHP or are really good with JavaScript and writing or .NET code, and they want to write their own controls. We've got features in Titan like the application block that make integrating that content very easy. A lot of times it'll just be, for the example of a PHP application, it's probably running on some IIS site someplace or some other web server someplace. Well, if you have a fully qualified URL to that page, you plop it into the app block and say, hey, get that, and it'll take the HTML it generates and put it right in line in your web page.
Why don't you show that one? You did that one yesterday with our own website, embedding it.
And sample 2 here. Let's put an application block in. So the application block, let's see. What was a good example? The Titan CMS site?
Yeah, Titan CMS site. Yeah. I think you had to have yes. Didn't you have to put the HTTPS?
Yep. So while the Titan CMS site isn't an application per se, it's a URL. It generates the HTML. That's what the application block is really good at. Take that HTML and put it right in line on my page. So we'll go ahead and try to do that. And there we go. So the application block ran, queried that page. The formatting is a little bit iffy, but I have all that content right in line. Now, go ahead.
Oh, the question is why explain why the formatting is iffy. So why, when it came back, why does that application block not render perfectly with the HTML and the CSS that got sent back by that call to the Titan CMS site?
Well, it seems like a lot of the content is maybe relative paths. So the HTML, when it renders, an image tag might just be /files/logo.jpg, right? Or, some of these graphics do appear, maybe they're fully qualified. They're off to a full URL. Well, if they're fully qualified, the HTML will know how to find that resource. If they're not, it won't.
It won't know where to find it. It's making a reference that's on your shared drive, and this site doesn't have access to that shared drive, so it's not going to find them.
Right. Same thing with CSS resources. Some of the styling might look like from TitanCMS.com. It might not. It might be inheriting some styles from your theme. It might be inheriting styles from another CSS file that was fully qualified in the HTML. So that type of thing is going to require some digging and looking and tinkering. Now, an alternative to the application block is still using the raw HTML block and doing an iframe. So if you're familiar with an iframe, it's creating an element in your document that is intended to fully encapsulate a remote URL. So I think it's with the source attribute. So if I was to say TitanCMS.com in the body or as the source of an iframe, and iframes are HTML elements, they need some styling in order to look right. I think this will probably be small unless I specify a width. Like, we'll do 50%. That should be probably good. A height, I don't know, like 250. Just as an example. But now, sure enough, I'm seeing what looks to be like a closer representation of all of that content, even in the responsive mode, because it's kind of a narrower width here, but it's interactive elements. I got lots of content. I got
Rendering better.
imagery.
The images are rendering correctly. Because
Yep.
you did an iframe, now it's resolving that entire thing, taking all the HTML as rendered and putting it back inside of the page in a smaller window inside of your page.
Right. Yep. And there's probably a little bit deeper in the weeds technical nuance we could talk about there, but suffice it to say, as an option for customizing your website and your content and exploring and pulling in, custom functionality from places, yeah, I think that gives a good sense, for doing it this way also.
So typically you wouldn't pull in an entire website into your system, but you would pull in something that somebody else has written. And hopefully it's a fragment or just a calculator or a function or a form or something else like that. So this is
right.
how people often embed links to other people's forms, the Jot form or a Constant Contact or whatever else you're trying to link to. They give you the code, and oftentimes when third parties give you code, it's cleaner. It's got fully resolved URLs, as John mentioned, so that it's not images aren't breaking and styles aren't breaking because all of the stuff is self-contained and they've written it in such a way that's self-contained, which is, again, when you're doing custom dev and you're trying to do things a little bit more advanced, a little more knowledge of how HTML and CSS works is going to come in really handy.
Yep.
All right.
So those were three easy ones that I had in mind. Did you have some that you were thinking of, Pat?
Well, mine are not nearly as sophisticated as yours, but thanks for asking.
Oh.
And so I have a screen over here. One of the other questions on kind of the customization I had to do, and let me share my screen. So I'll do that. Share screen. Yes, I'm kicking you off, John.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all good. And so you should be able to see my screen down over here. So the question was around Linktree, which is another customization, a way to embed. The question is, could we imitate something like the Linktree behavior we saw in the Dallas Zoo? This is one of the questions came in. And Linktree, for those that don't know what it is a kind of a social media page. So if you have an Instagram account and you post something to Instagram, you want to be able to say, and check out more of my stuff at this link, but Instagram only allows you to have one link on there. So that link has to serve a lot of purposes. And ideally, it kind of takes you to another web page. And so a whole bunch of services, including Linktree, have popped up out there that allow you to build kind of a landing page like this. And this one, for the Dallas, it looks like it's been optimized already for mobile, but it's really laid out for mobile platforms. So that kind of makes sense. And I haven't played with Linktree enough to know all the ins and outs of it. But Linktree has a whole bunch of services, but at its core, it's just kind of a web page with a bunch of buttons on it that link someplace else. And so I said, all right, how do we build one of those? And so I went over to our developer site over here at Northwoods, and I built a Linktree demo page. So how did I do that? Well, I went over to, actually, let me bring it up over here. First of all, I'm going to bring another button onto the screen here. Give me a second. So I went to say, I want to just get some HTML that builds buttons. And so here I went and I Googled make a big button, and it brought up this sheetcodes.io, whatever. There's probably a million places that have the same stuff. And here's the HTML. And so I said, I'm just going to copy and paste this HTML. So I went copy, and I went into the Titan workstation. I'm going to edit this block. This is just a freeform block. I went into the source code, and I'll paste it again down over here, but it's just a duplicate of what's above. And I just pasted the code in there. So here's the style. I want to define a button, give it a color. I called it red. And the text color was white, and how much padding, border, et cetera. Again, if you understand a little bit about CSS, these all make sense. And then I went in and I just made a basic button. So in the beginning, let me just I'll get rid of the style stuff over here. I just said button. So the thing I just said, my button, click me. And so I just wanted to make it a little bit more. So I put little paragraph tags around it. And then we were done. And here's how it rendered. So then I put some text up above it. So for this class, and I was all done. So I went into the source code over here, pasted the source code in, and dropped a little bit of custom buttons inside there. And then if I wanted to make a new button, all I do is copy and paste. And now I got another one. And instead of click me, I'm going to say my Facebook page. I'm going to go Pat's Twitter. No, it's called X account. And we're all done. And I go back over here. Here's my Facebook page, my LinkedIn page, my X account. And I could take these, highlight the text, and make a link out of it. I'm just linking it out using all the link builder. I assume you all know how to do that. I'm all done. And then I publish, or I can just hit preview here. And there it is, a LinkedIn page. And this layout that I'm using happens to have a nav on the top. So if you wanted to be true to what Link Builder is doing, Linktree is doing, you would make a little custom layout, which would probably be the last thing, John, we could hop into today, is just like
sure.
Go about editing layouts. So just a reminder for everybody that hasn't done it, if I wanted to change the layout right now, I don't think I have a blank one with just an empty page. So if I go down on page properties for this particular page, I can look to see what is the layout. I've got center, home, and left nav center. And so each one of these has different attributes. This has a main navigation. I think this is just content. And if I put the left nav center, I think you actually kind of get a sense if I preview this, here, put a navigation over on the side. So that's what, by switching that layout, I inserted more elements automatically onto that page. Here, if I go back over there and I get rid of left nav center, just go back to center and hit preview, you can see that navigation that was over here is now gone, and now I only have content in the center. And if I wanted to just play with the HTML a little bit more, I could center this all. I could change, make a new layout. Maybe that's, John, you could take a layout and just give us a, you don't have to test it, but make a hypothetical one that would just clean all of this nav out of the top over there, and the header and the footer, take it out. Just a very, very clean page with nothing else on it. And what would that look like? So
Sure.
if you wanted to build a Linktree page, this is kind of it. Then it gets a unique URL. You would come in here and you would say, you can make this URL anything you want. So I can go link, I can call it Linktree if I want, Pat's page. And I could save that. And now that would be, I'm not going to save it, but this would be that would be a link I would embed on my Instagram page that would take me here. And we have the ability, Titan has the ability to add additional codes and snippets for Google tracking, some of the things that Linktree can do. And I didn't actually fully explore. So actually anybody online that asked this question, I think there's a couple people have joined us. What are the other Linktree things that you are looking for? If anybody's out there, I'll pause for a second. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the person that asked that question, and our zoo is looking for a solution. And unfortunately, our zoo users are not nearly as technical enough to be able to go into the HTML to kind of maintain that.
Yeah.
So one of the features that Linktree has is an easy way to add and reorder and things like that, all through a user interface, which it looks like your guys' solution would involve editing the raw HTML.
But I'm glad you went there. So let me take you to the next step. All right. So let me come back over to just the content. We want to take it the content tab over here. So you like this page and it's all built up, and this is something that the county can do today, is on this particular page is I can make this into the content library. So John, I'm going to walk me through if I do anything wrong over here, but I'm going to say, I like this page, and this is kind of a preview.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to edit, but I want the standard color to be blue because that's the county color. And so I'm going to do it. So now I've got it pretty well set. I've got some links. I got a header, footer. I got everything all aligned the way I need to do it. And so I'm going to go over to the content. I'm going to open the library.
Oh, wait, go back.
Yep. Sorry. I have to, yep, you're right. Wrong spot.
If you want to add it to the library, use copy the selected blocks, and it'll give you a dialog to give that a name.
Link
for an item in the library.
Linktree, link, let's spell it right. Linktree template. And then I call it the Linktree template. And created by Patrick. I'll come back and do a preview in a second because I can add that later on and browse that. But I'm going to put this in the global library so it's available for anybody. And I'm going to say done. And now I'm going to go to a new page for the zoo. Here's the Save changes. Actually, yes, let's do that. I'm going to go over to here and let's pretend that's the zoo's page. And the zoo has this block all written up and they want to add a Linktree thing on the bottom of it. Or actually, they probably want to make a standalone page altogether, right? So
Right.
they would go off nav. They would go create a new page and they would call zoo, zoo Linktree page. And so we got zoo Linktree down over here. I go to the zoo Linktree, I add a block. I go to the library. I go to the global library. And I didn't do a little preview of it, which we can show you how to do that next. And we're going to add one of the features we're going to add is the ability to sort through these. Here's Linktree template. I go insert and boom, done. And now all you got to do is double click on it. Don't go into the HTML. Do not pass go. Just kind of come in here and say zoo tickets and zoo, double click zoo hours. And so on and so forth. Save it, create a couple links with using things, say done, and now it's their page, and now we have the zoo page all set up. Is that something you think the zoo could handle?
Yeah, for sure. So can you like copy and paste to add a new one?
So yeah, if you wanted to add another thing to another link on the bottom, yep.
Yeah.
Double click over here. So I do copy. It doesn't highlight it really well, but I can do Control C and Control V, Control V. Oops, I got to hit enter in between. There you go. Edit each one of them. Make as many links as you want. Done. Rearrange them. If you wanted to get fancy, highlight everything on the page and hit center, put them all in the middle, and go nuts. And you could actually enhance this block by adding a little background image. So you get this block kind of all pre-set up, and then you put it in the library, make it a global library, and now you have a Linktree page ready to go. All you have to do is edit it, double click on it, build the links, change the color. So if they wanted to change the color, the zoo wants it to be green. You say, all right, this is really simple. I know, I'll do it for you. Just we'll make it green. And we go done. And now that the page is green. So you have to know one tiny trick. Most people can handle that. I know they might freak out a little bit, but and or you just do it for them because it takes 3 seconds. While they're sitting on the phone, hey, they ask you, can you make it purple? You go, yep, I can. Hang on. All right, check it now. It's purple. And they think you're a genius. Does that work for you? Or what else would they need to do?
And then specifically analytics on this page to see how many times a link was clicked.
Yeah, so that would be a little bit more on the HTML side. That's going to get just an inch more fancy. So you when you set up this block would have to embed some JavaScript or put a snippet onto this page.
Okay.
So John, handle the analytic part of this. There's probably a couple of strategies for doing it.
Yeah, I think the primary way people would want to accomplish the analytics side would be through like GTM, right? So we would
Google Tag Manager,
right.
Okay.
So you would use Google Tag Manager and you'd probably assign some events to the various buttons and then come back into your free form and then make changes so that there was a JavaScript event tied to each one that would then get pushed as a record into the Google Tag Manager for analytics. A more basic way that Titan gives you, which since most people use Google Analytics for all this analysis, that's what we encourage. But you could also, if the zoo tickets page is a page in Titan, well, you can go to that page and see how many times it's been viewed. It doesn't necessarily give you a great insight about who clicked it and got there, but I think Google Analytics provides that at a much better analytical tool for seeing the traffic and the pattern and the funnel and all that stuff.
So going back over here, if we wanted to do this more advanced, so this would be a little bit more work for tracking the analytics. This is why Linktree, they get $10 a month for doing this because they have all of this kind of ready to go and built in. Titan can do everything you're asking for, but beyond having this and be able to click the links, you would add under the snippets manager, there would be a snippet over here called Google Tag Manager. You would assign values to this page. So I don't know if, I guess we're not really prepared to put that in. Let me put this on the page done here. where you would edit the values inside of here. So inserting this tag onto here, and then on each of the individual pieces of HTML, if I'm not mistaken, you would then add another, you would set this up ahead of time,
right?
With some tag manager attributes on the button class. You'd say, I don't know what the values would be, John, but it would be class equals or something, or what ID?
Well, yeah, it'd probably be ID. You'd give an identifier to each button. And then in Google Tag Manager's interface, you would say, hey, whenever there's an event connected to this ID, give it this value. And when it's this ID, give it that value. And the way to do that, Fred's a great resource for all of that stuff.
It's a specialty that it's not hard, but it's just a matter of putting the little bits and pieces, like I'm saying, into your code here so that all of that tracking is done, and it's done fairly generically. So again, this is something we could help you do, probably an hour of consulting with Fred, and you could put all the parts and pieces in place into the generic template. And then whenever somebody used this, you would have to just learn a little bit how to tweak it so that it tracks individually. So, and again, or you pay Linktree $10 a month and, they do it for you. So, but Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager has the ability to do this. I guess the second part of that, to your question, is that once this data is collected, it's going into the central repository of Google. So you'd have to talk to Carlton or whoever has access to that to be able to say, we've set up some events inside of these Linktree pages and we want to track it. Can you give me access to it? Or give me some reports so that you're getting that information.
Right.
Or you pay $10 a month to Linktree.
Yep. No, this was super helpful.
Okay, great. Yeah, so anyways, it's all doable, and all available to you, and or a tiny bit of consulting and Northwoods, we can give you a head start, fast start to get it all done. So then, John, we also asked about the last way to customize a page, which would have been the template. So changing this over here. So
let me see if I can take back over the screen share.
Yep.
And go like that. Oh, share. All right. So back into this environment on an empty page, Pat showed how on the properties tab, we've got this drop down here for changing your layout. This link right below it, if you're an administrator, you'll see this link. If not, you'll have to connect with an admin. But this takes you into Titan Admin to the section where your theme is hooked up and the layout's configured in that theme. And so what you would do is, if you wanted to have the blank layout, right? You didn't want to have the nav on the top and the bottom and the various, search bars, all that type of stuff. You can set up your own just by saying, I would like to create a new page layout. And we'll call it a blank layout. And you can base it off of an existing layout configuration wise. It's probably going to be very similar to the center layout. So I'm going to say copy the configuration from that. And here we've got it created a copy of the CS.html file, which is a Razor file. It's essentially some HTML scaffolding with C# integrated into it for the developers. But the workstation gives you a simple text UI for editing it. And so what you're seeing here is a copy of a file that ships with Titan base. But if everything about this is essentially the same, except you don't want the nav, well, then you have to find the section in here that contains the nav. Let's see, there's the header area and a logo and the search bar. So you have to do a little bit of digging and looking through this, but like here's the breadcrumb. Well, we don't want that. We don't want page nav. We'll get rid of that. We probably don't need any of those page tools. We don't need the title. We just need the center zone. We're not going to have any ratings. So this is the type of thing that it takes a little bit of reading and looking. We don't want a footer. We don't have that scroll to the top button. Looks like, well, here's the top zone. So just kind of stripping out all of the extra stuff. Let's get rid of the whole header. We don't want logos or anything. And then if all we're doing is a section with the center zone, then this is essentially done. This section here is variable calculation. to hook in the various bits and pieces of content that are coming from Titan. The only one of these that's important, I guess, now that we've stripped out all that HTML is center content, which is, I'm not seeing.
There's no harm in just leaving all this stuff in. It's not.
Yeah, it's no harm in leaving it all in. Oh, it's right
just
there.
it's all going to be
So-
ignored. So
It's all going to get ignored, but you know, the developer in me wants to make sure we don't
there you go.
have all sorts of cruft. So that's it right there. So you could take down layout that's just this, and now we're going to have essentially a blank layout with just a center zone.
And
And
now
now,
you could take that tree thing. Yep.
yep. So if I go ahead and refresh this page and change the layout to my new blank layout. Oh, I have to.
You have to refresh that bars.
Got to do a little refresh here because I haven't actually hit save. It's just doing all that code changing behind the scenes. So now let's get this refreshed. Properties. Where is it? Oh, and that was, we created the layout, but it's not actually wired up to
You're right.
the site. So anybody else using the theme needs to come and say, hey, I need to, yep, here it is. There's our new layout. Now it's active. And if we wanted to, we could hook up some snippets for it by default.
Your tag, the Google Tag Manager, you can insert all that in there. So that's being run.
Yep. So that would, yeah. So then anybody using that would automatically get those things and not have to remember to do it later. You could do that. So let's save and try that one more time. Properties. There it is. Now we got the blank layout, and we can go to our content, and we could create our free form with our buttons. Which did I do?
I don't know if you saved it. I think you're in a different site.
Probably a different environment, but for the sake of using that example, you just want a button tag. So that's a button.
Or I can chat you some code real quick. You want some code?
That's all right.
All right.
There it is. Text for my button. Mine doesn't look as nice as Pat's, so he wins the
I get this
front end
board.
designer reward. For the sake of the example, done. And if I preview this page, there it is. So you can
Nothing
see
on the page.
there's nothing else on the page because we stripped it all out except for the blocks and the text for my button.
So now you want a Linktree page. All we had to do was create a blank template. You might have one already in the county. And if not, again, as John just showed you, it's not that hard to make a new one. You do need administrator rights or someone to give you permission to do that. And if not, you can reference to the people that know how to do it to watch this video. And then, yeah, he's centering it and putting them in the page. And now we have the Linktree page. We would make a custom URL for it, giving it its own thing. And now when you land on here, obviously you can decorate this with a logo or whatever else you need. The zoo, background image, put a giraffe in the background, whatever. That's all doable. Save it into the template content library. And anybody now in the county can copy it from the content library, which you have, paste it onto their page, and all of this work is done, ready to go. They just have to edit the buttons and create some links.
Right. One different way, Pat showed a great way of, if you have 5 or 6 or 7 buttons, and that's what to paste in every time, you can do it that way. I might even consider doing a copy of one button, right? If I copy one button and then, I, in theory, paste it in a whole bunch of times. So it's a little bit tedious now, but we're considering an update where you would be able to do something like Control-C and Control-V or a button, a little icon to click that just says copy this block immediately, right in the page. But if I insert another one and I insert another one, so now I've got these 3 individual buttons, but I could grab this one and drag it to the bottom. And now I've got an easier way to interact with each individual button and order them, a little bit more flexibly.
Another way to do it.
you still have to go in and, add the links and all that stuff, but just different ways to consider the same problem with in a different way that might make it easier for your authors and editors.
Okay. Well, I think that the questions we got so far, did anybody else, Tibber, did we answer your question? Jennifer, do you have anything else you wanted to inquire about?
No, I think this looks good. You guys make it look so easy.
Well,
I highly doubt it will be once we try to log in and do a proof of concept, but it's nice to know there's alternatives.
we're going to make these available so you can watch this video again, slow it down.
Awesome.
And obviously your
You
environment's
was moving a little fast today. I was like, okay.
I totally get the moving fast, so we're trying to get through it, but you can
I appreciate it.
you can watch the video, hit pause, rewind. So that's an awesome thing. And your environment's going to be a little bit different, and there might be some restrictions. So if you see something on the screen that doesn't quite match or work, send us a note, a message, and we'll try to accommodate you with whatever other clues you need to be able to do it. You might have some permissions if you don't have administrative permissions. You might have some impediments there, especially when you get into the analytics part. That's going to be a little trickier. You might need some consulting, a little bit of consulting help to at least get it set up the first time. Watching how it was done, you can learn how to do it, and then you can do it again the next time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and we kind of alluded to this. One thing that will kind of naturally become a constraint is the design that you have. The beautiful design that has been structured and built so that everything stays nice and consistent and neat. Well, if we're talking about ways to go outside of that, right? So if depending on how it was implemented, it might not let you get outside easily, right? Which was a good thing.
It might fight back, right?
Consistent.
Right. Yeah. So it's always a balance between what your branding police want to have enforced on the websites and what you aspire to in your design sensibilities. That is always a creative tension. There is a yin yang zen to this all. And so we hope for harmony within your environments.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no other questions, anything else either you guys have?
No, I have a page to create, but I think what you showed today will make it a little easier for me. So once I finish playing around with it, I'll reach back out if I have any more questions.
Awesome. Happy. We're here to help. All right. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for participating in our first office hours. We're going to try to do this once a month. So if you have follow-ups, you can certainly reach out at any time to your account director here at Northwoods, or send another question in, and we'll tackle it, John and I, at the next office hours coming up in about a month or so.
Great.
All right.
All right. Thank you both. I appreciate you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.